What's happening with Edwards and Covington, guys? Why has the UFC not made this fight yet? I mean, you've got a champion in Leon Edwards who just put away the previous number one contender, Kamaru Usman. He hasn't fought since March. If you remember back to that fight, Colby Covington was an alternate for that fight. He was keen. He wanted to fight. He's been looking for a fight since March. He has fought in March, but he's been looking for a fight ever since. There was talk of him fighting Dustin Poirier. I understand why that fight hasn't been made. There was talk of him fighting Hamza Chimaev. That would have been a great fight. I think that would have been a clear number one contender fight at 170. That fight never happened. Colby Covington recently came out and said, he's ready to go. Leon Edwards, he's waiting on Leon Edwards. And I'm quite surprised that fight hasn't been made yet. Is it money? Is Leon Edwards trying to hold up the division? Leon Edwards historically hasn't been the most active guy. He had a couple of fights a year in his career in the last couple of years, but it's been so glaringly obvious that this fight should have been made and announced ages ago. They didn't have to fight yet, but at least announce the fight, guys. I mean, it's so obvious. UFC 295, you've only got John Jones and Stipe so far. That's going to be the main event. Baddest man on the planet. Makes 100% sense. It's the 30th year anniversary for the UFC at UFC 295. You need a couple of title fights on that card. The 205 title, we don't really know what's happening there because Yuri Prohaska said he's coming back, but we also don't know. You've got Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira. There was talk of that being for a title, but now those claims have been rubbished. That title is off for the card. The 185 pound division, we know what's happening there. I have my thoughts on that. I think they should wait for Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya to either do it next year at UFC Africa, or if you really want to have the first fight, do it at UFC 295. Don't do the Strickland fight. It doesn't really make any sense for anybody. But as it stands, it's probably going to be Izzy and Sean Strickland in September. So that title's out. The 155 title, that's just been announced. Islam is fighting Charles Oliveira. That fight makes sense. They're fighting in Abu Dhabi in October. That title's gone. 145, there's a possibility. Volk said he wants to be back, but we don't know yet how the surgery is going to go. But even if you put the 145 title there, you still need at least 3 title fights on such an important card, I feel. So the 170-pound title has to be added to that card. You can build that card around the 3 title fights. I mean, the pay-per-view numbers will be insane, but the fight hasn't been made yet. Why? Why not? Like, everything is there. If you look at that 170-pound division, Colby Covington is the clear number one contender. Kamaru Usman's not fighting for a title again unless Leon Edwards is not the champion. And even if Colby were to say, be the champion, are they going to have another fight? We don't know. Bilal, people still want to see a little bit more action on Bilal. I think Bilal and Usman is a much better fight, particularly now that Usman doesn't have anybody to fight with. But that's a topic that I'll get into. So it's so clear and obvious. But the UFC still hasn't announced the fight. So I'm hoping it's just something small like money. I'm hoping that Edwards isn't injured or there's something else going on there. But that fight needs to be made, guys. We want to see Leon Edwards and Colby Covington, the 170-pound title at UFC 295. Make the fight happen, guys.